Okay, so I am going to do a tour of many of the bones that are going to be important for Methea Sapp's Bio 241 Anatomy and Physiology at Spokane Community College. I won't be able to cover all of them due to the constraints of the skeleton that I have, but I'm going to go through the lab manual section for skeletons and do the best I can. So I have it in front of me. I'm just going to go down the list and show you what I can. So she starts off with sutures. You have your skull here, and the first one is a sagittal suture, which is the one that's gonna be going there. And you have your coronal one, think about like a crown, is along there. Your next one is your squamous, which is the one that you see right here. Also note that some of my pronunciation is gonna be different as I pronounce things the way that's gonna help me spell them, since spelling does count. And the suture right along the back there is your lambdoid suture. So this one that goes along there. Okay, next page. The next one is actually talking about the children's skull, which I don't have, but I can show you when it's talking about the fontanelles or talking about the soft spots. So your anterior fontanelle is gonna be in this area. That's where it's not fused together. You get in the children's infant skull, and then back here will be your posterior fontanelle or occipital fontanelle. So that's just the soft spots. With the sinuses, it's kind of doesn't really show in this skull, but your frontal sinus will be behind here, and then you'll also have your sphenoidal, ethmoidal, and maxillary. Maxillary ones are kind of they're gonna be behind here. And then you'll have to see the sphenoidal and ethmoidal sinuses with a different cut, like a sagittal cut skull that's in lab. General area of bones, this is your frontal bone right here. And you have your frontal squama, which is an area here. So it was explained that some people, when the bones are fusing together, they don't fuse together softly, so they actually have a mark here. But this is your frontal squama. You have your supraorbital margin. So supra is above, orbital eye. The margin is just this area. Frontal sinuses are behind here. And right here, this guy has supraorbital foramen, because foramen's the hole. If this was not connected, it would be a supraorbital notch. And some people have both foramen or both notches, or one on one side and one on the other. All right, when you have your parietal bones, which are both on either side of your sagittal suture. And then we move to occipital bone. Sorry for the awkward filming. And then you're missing my socks to hold it up. This is gonna be your occipital bone, this one in the back. You have the foramen magnum, so big hole right there. Your occipital condyles are going to be along the sides right here. The hypoglossal canal is actually on the inside. Oh, I can't see it very well, it's in there. So think of the canal, it's that hole in there, glossal. And your external occipital protuberance is this guy right there that's external, outside occipital, this backbone, and it's a protuberance, it's sticking out. We have next. We're moving on to a temporal bone, so by your temple here. And we're gonna have to move some of this, but that's your mastoid process. So process is sticking out there. Also keep in mind, don't forget all these bones, because when we talk about muscles and everything else, a lot of the insertion and origin are gonna have to do with some of these bony features. This is your styloid process. It's gonna be the pointier one there. Your mandibular fossa is actually where your mandible's coming in, so this little area there. Jugular foramen. All right, so the jugular foramen would be easier without the mandible on there, but is this one here. It kind of looks to me like two circles together, like you juggle balls, so that's how I remember the jugular is bigger. And right there would, this skull doesn't show it, but that would be your carotid foramen. It's just not going all the way through on this model there. External auditory meatus is right there. And the internal one, I actually have to, oh, you see my Olaf pants too. Let's take off top. And so you have your external right there, and it goes the internal right there. So it goes all the way through. So there's your jugular foramen that we talked about. Then we have the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. So it's actually just this section over here, not the entire area, just that one. All right, the sphenoid bone, we'll be able to go over some of it, but I actually prefer the ones that are in lab. But you're gonna have your lesser wings and your greater wings. And what is next? Oh, the sphenoidal sinus you can't see in this one. Your sella turcica is right here. That actually means Turkish saddle. So it kind of looks like a saddle if you're sitting on a horse right here. The optic foramen are kind of these little eyes. This whole thing kind of looks like a bat to me, I guess. And there's little eyes there are your optic foramen. Your supraorbital fissure is here. So if you're looking this way, right there, it's actually above the eye. So supra and orbital eye and fissure. I thought of it as being a really big hole, like kind of like a lake that you could fish out of. Your pterygoid process don't show on this one really well. They are going to be like little fangs sticking out on either side. Foramen spinosum. All right, so that's going to be the littlest one right there. And then you're going to have the ovale, which is kind of an oval above it. The one I don't like, it doesn't show all the way through there, but on this side is there, is actually the foramen rotundum. And when I hear rotund, I think big, but it's not actually big. And then your foramen lacerum are these guys. So ovale, spinosum, rotundum, and lacerum there. Your next one is your ethmoid bone, which this is the view we're getting here. So it has your cribriform plates on either side. This is your crista galli. I think I thought about it as Krista is laying in the crib. So crista galli, cribriform plates. Your perpendicular plate, you're gonna be able to see from this view, is this part up there. Not the whole thing, but more towards the top. And what else do we have with that? Superior nasal concha. So it's gonna be this, not shown in this one, because this is right here is the middle nasal concha. And later we'll get to the lower, or the inferior nasal concha is gonna be this one. So you can see the inferior in the middle. The nasal, the superior nasal is actually shown on a different, only one model. So I would ask Methea about that one. Moving on to more bones. So we're moving on to the mandible here. This is your mandible body up front. This is the angle of the mandible. Your ramus is this spot. The condylar process is the part that's going to go into the mandibular fossa there. And this is the coronoid process. Your mandibular notch. Mandibular foramen is actually on the inside, so it's right there. You can kind of see that one's a little bit better. Mandibular foramen. And your mental foramen are these two notches, or sorry, not notches, holes on the front. Notches on the front. Your maxilla bone is this, this area here, so kind of above. Remember I said behind here would be your maxillary sinuses. Palatine process, you have to see from underneath. All right, so your palatine process is here, and while we're right here, we'll just talk about the palatine bone, which is over here. So the palatine process is actually part of the maxillary or maxilla bone, And the palatine bone is up here, more towards the back, like the palate, and this is the horizontal plate for that. But the last part of the maxilla bone is going to be right here, which are your infraorbital foramen. So think of all the foramen, all these holes that are going through. Your lacrimal bone, so you have your nasal bone right here, which is later in the list, but I'll just say it now since we're here. And then your lacrimal bone is kind of where your tear ducts are, near your eye. And next on your list is the inferior nasal concha, which is that one. And it is its own bone. Then as I said, your nasal bone and your vomer. You have ear ossicles, which you can't actually see on these models. You have to look at them a little kind of individually in lab, but the malleus looks like a little mallet, and then your incus and your stapes. Your stapes, to me, it looks like a little triangle, kind of like the staple where to close. And your hyoid bone, which is actually just connected to the rest of my skeleton, is this little guy here, which is not where it belongs, it's just where they hooked it. So that's gonna be your hyoid bone. And that's general covering of the skull and facial bones. And I'm going to make a separate video to add on that has the vertebral column, and we'll move on to everything else.